The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters. That's a mouthful to say, in Tarzana, California. Ran out of breath. So thrilled to be here with you on a Tuesday morning. We got a big show planned for you. We're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective, answering your questions live in real time. We're talking about it all. You know, we had a bunch of questions come in from a couple of different parents yesterday, and I can't tell you enough how much it drives the show when you guys ask questions, because it reminds me, oh, this is something that we really got to talk about because this has changed. So hopefully we're going to have some time today to talk about some funding, because progress is the name of the game. And as I was thinking through this last night, you know, you get into that sort of circular, like sometimes you feel like the hamster on the wheel where you're chasing your own tail, because you think, okay, well, I need to do this. But before I can do that, I got to do this. And then before I can do that, I got to do this. And with autism, what it all comes back to is, do you have the funding? Because if you don't have the funding, you can't go and do all the other things that there are to do. So, and it reminded me yesterday, just the words from one parent in particular about how many things we all have to do to get those things in place. And I remember those days. I try to black them out from time to time, but I remember those days because, as you know, I always tell you guys, I'm not an expert in autism, but I am an autism parent. And I have been on this path it's over 7 years now. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, and he is about to be 10. And you know, those early days seem like they were a week ago on some days, and then other days it just seems so very far away. And I always like to remind you that while I'm not an expert in autism, I am passionate because I do remember what it was like in those early days, feeling like I was completely alone. And I most especially don't want you to feel like you're alone. And I don't want you to feel as though there's no hope. So we're going to talk about some of the hopeful things today. And we're also going to put some perspective on it and then figure out, how do we get there? How do we all get there? Not just some of us. How do we all get there? What do we need to do to give us all that kind of progress? Now, if you want to add to the conversation today, because as I said yesterday, it just added so much to the show. If you want to be a part of that, there are many ways for you to participate. Emily's going to start to show you some of those ways on the screen. I'm going to remind you that there's only one way to watch us live. That's www.autism-live.com. When you go there, you see a desktop. There's a white box. It says questions we're answering right now. Put your cursor there, type away, hit enter. Now, we're only live for 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday. That's 10 hours a week. It's a lot, can I tell you? But it's not enough, right? Because there are so many of you watching us around the world. So we've been leaving the box active. So through the night, if you're watching, and the show plays 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's only live those 10 hours a week. But now you have the possibility, if you're watching live and you want to type your question and hit enter, I will get it in the morning and then we'll address it on the next live show. So we're trying that out, and it seems like you guys are responding well to that, so we're going to keep doing it for now. But I am thrilled to be able to be here. I don't think I get to say that enough. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to be able to learn And I hope to give back, because if it hadn't been for parents who helped me along the way and told me, look, this is what you need to do, this is where you have to go, this is what you have to consider, these are the questions you want to ask, here's, more information about this, look it over and see if this is right for you. If it hadn't been for those people, I honestly don't know where we would be. And instead, where we are is in a very, very good place. So I have a lot to pay back, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to pay it back in a way that's really fun and interactive and a joy to me. By the way, all the different ways that you can watch our show are free. All of the advice that we give here, it is not child specific, because of course that would be a disservice, right? It is meant to be informational, for you to take the information and to sort out for yourself what you want to do, because I know that as a parent, your gut is the most important part of this puzzle. I also want to say too that for those of you who are joining us who are on the spectrum, welcome. There are more and more of you that are young adults, teenagers and young adults, and even older adults who are watching and tuning in, and we love your input and experience and point of view, and always want to be mindful. I know that we talk here about combating autism, and what I mean to say when I say that is combating disabling aspects of autism. I think we can all get behind that and agree that that's a really important thing to do, and that there's progress available for literally all of us. Everyone who's on the spectrum and all of us who are not on the spectrum, or at least not diagnosed on the spectrum, for all of us, there's progress to be had, right? We want to live our lives. We want to be happy. We want to achieve the things that we want to achieve. And ultimately, that's what we talk about here on the show. How do we achieve those things? So I hope that you will participate with us. Now, we start every morning here with something we call the jargon of the day. This is when we take one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to make sense of it within our autism community, within our individual circumstances. Sometimes there are words that are misleading because it seems like something we've used in another part of our life, but it has a completely opposite or different meaning when we're talking about it in conjunction with autism. The jargon is intensive in the autism journey, but we take it a little bit at a time and try to make sense of it. And I, of course, find it really fun to poke fun at some of the definitions, which are harder to understand than the actual jargon term, right? It is what it is. But it is important to know and understand these terms eventually so that we get more done. We want to be more efficient, more effective, meet the goals and the progress that we want. So today's term, something very near and dear to my heart, token economy. All right, so let's take a look at what a token economy is. I know we all hear about economy, right? But this can be something that really helps us to get job number one done. Job number one, progress. Okay, our actual definition for a token economy is earning generalized conditioned reinforcers as an immediate consequence for specific behaviors, then exchange them for backup reinforcers. Fabulous. What the heck does that mean? So let's take a look at our working definition. When a child earns tokens, stickers, coins, or something else that is motivating so that they can trade it for something else. If you stop and think about it, and we put it here in the context of a child, but we're all functioning on a token economy, right? That's what money is. It's a token economy. Money is just metal and paper, right? But we get to trade it for something else. So we do our job, we get our paycheck, right? So that's one piece of paper, and we trade that for more pieces of paper. Sometimes now it's on a card, right? We've gotten really virtual with it, but we trade that for other things. And we love our jobs, hopefully, but still how many people would do their jobs totally for free if there wasn't some sort of reward, right? In a lot of cases, it's that money reward. Sometimes it's the good feeling that the job brings, but there's always something that helps to maintain that we're doing our jobs, right? If you went to a job where they didn't pay you and they treated you horrible, we would call that chain gang, right? So same thing for our children, but it doesn't have to be money. If we want a child to do something and it's something where we have to delay the reinforcer, either because we're teaching them how to work harder and longer to get a reinforcer, or because we literally can't get the reinforcer there. Think about at school. When we start with a very small child, sometimes what's reinforcing to the child is a food item. We really didn't ever use food with my son. I can think of, one time when they were working on something and we used hot dogs, because that was a really big thing, exciting, but it wasn't the big overwhelming reinforcer for him. But imagine a child who really loves hot dogs. And so you're going to give them a piece of hot dog when they get one answer right. Well, eventually this child goes off to school. The teacher is not going to sit there and give the child a piece of hot dog. Shouldn't also. Not that the teacher's not going to, but that they shouldn't also. That's not socially appropriate in a classroom setting, right? To give a child a piece of hot dog every time they get an answer right. Now, you will see some teachers on some occasions, special occasions, children get an answer right and they give out candy, but that's a special occasion. So how do we get our kids to work for things and not get that immediate, instant gratification? With tokens and stickers and other things, even money, when a child eventually gets a little bit older and we say, okay, so if you do your chores this week and there's 10 things and you have to check them all off and each one you check, you get a check for it, right? That's kind of a token economy. It's a check, it counts, right? It's like a sticker. And when you get 10 of them or 15 of them, then you get $1, right? Which is another token economy because eventually they're going to go and they're going to spend the $1 on something else that is the actual reinforcer. So it's sort of that stopgap thing that allows you to get your child to whatever the reinforcer is. Maybe for a young child, the reinforcer is getting to play with a toy car, right? And so that on a sticker chart, they have to get 3 stickers before they can go and play with a car. We'll see with Jack Riley a little bit later in the A word that they have the little sticker chart, and they make those really reinforcing too with characters that they like when they're little. We went through the Disney phase, and then we went through the Spider-Man phase, and then we went through the Star Wars sticker phase, right? And then eventually, we just went back to happy faces because it wasn't cool to have whatever. And in the beginning, the therapists, before we had the sticker chart, until we made one, they put little stars on a paper. You got to get 5 stars, dude. And when you get 5 stars, then we get to go play with the swords. Okay, star. Right? It doesn't have to be complicated. And I've shared before that you can get them for free on your phone. It's a lovely thing. I'm going to bring up, I have a free one on my phone, but there are so many that you can get, whether it's an Android or an iPhone. Token economies, let me see if I can find my free one. And my son now programs it for himself when we use one. And it's got to be in my applications. But so you can specify how many stickers they have to get. You can specify what they're working for. There are tons of these, and there are some where you can pay for them. Mine is called Easy Kid Tokens. So I push the little button, and I've got start and settings, and my son, the latest one he has is I am working for fighting zombies, okay? And he's got 3 little boxes here. So I don't know, we must have been someplace, and I just wanted to keep control of his behavior and said, what are we working for today? I want to work for fighting zombies. And so when he engaged in good behavior or the absence of behavior that I didn't want to see, whatever it was, then he got a little ladybug sticker. And you can change the ladybugs to other things. He plays with it and does different things. And then when it has a little reward thing, when you get all 3 of them, I put all 3 in the box. See? I don't know how well you can see on my phone, but and then it has his picture and little ladybugs floating around it. Very reinforcing for the kids. Free. And of course I love to laminate ones and make stickers and all kinds of things, but when you can get it on your phone for free and you don't have to be, looking around for the laminator, it's that much easier. But a token economy can help to make sure that places when you can't give automatic reinforcement, you've sort of got that stopgap and we're working towards things. It also helps our children to realize that every time you do something, you don't get something. Sometimes you have to put like 32 things together before you get something, and then you get your big reward. When my son was in kindergarten, we made fake money for school. And they were daddy dollars and mommy money. And they had pictures of us in them, and they were, you know, green and red and whatever. And if you did a really good job at school, and it's like token economies for token economies for token economies. The aide, when he was in kindergarten, had a little sticker chart for each part of the day, and he had to get a certain number of stickers, and then he got daddy dollars or mommy money, and he had to get 42 of them. I don't remember why it was 42, but he had to get 42 of them, and then we would go to Disneyland. So it took him a while, but man, he worked for that. He was just as thrilled as he could be to work for that, and he kept count of his daddy dollars and his mommy money. So, you know, think about how you want to do. There's so many ways to do token economies. Make it fun, make it reinforcing for the child. If they get the token and they're like, who cares? It's never going to turn into anything. It won't work, right? It's got to be something cool that they enjoy, whether it's putting a gold coin into a piggy bank, and when they get a certain number, right, that they can turn it in for something else. You can do short-term token economies like the 3 sticker thing, or it can be like 42 of something in order to get it. So really depends on what your child needs, and it has to be appropriate for what you're asking them to do. So what we don't want to have set up, and believe me, I've done this too, where I've said, oh, you know, you have to get 1,000 points and then you get this. It's too far away, right? Token economy, really, really effective. All right. Moving on, we always have a question of the day for you. And our question today, we've been talking a little bit about summer. So our question today is, how are you planning to prevent regression this summer? What's your plan? What are you putting a foothold in and saying, this is what we're going to work on. This is how we're going to work on it. Really interested to hear from you, because later in the week, we're going to have a lot of people on the show talking about things that you can do to prevent regression. I'm fairly confident that we will have time later on today to check in to see your answer to yesterday's question was, what are your plans for the summer? And then today, what are you planning to do to prevent regression? You know, it's a very real thing. Statistics, studies have shown that this happens to all kids, that if we don't keep up on skills, they will regress during the summer. Really important for all of our kids that we don't do that, but especially for kids on the autism spectrum who might already be running to catch up anyway. We don't want to let them get any further behind. I think for those of us who are parents of kids on the spectrum, especially those of us who had a child regress in the beginning, regress into autism, there's an emotional component to it too. Regression still to this day puts me out. If I see my son lose a skill, or if it starts to deteriorate, I go right back to day one when his speech went away, and it's not a good place for me. So I'm always thinking, how can we prevent that? Okay, we always have a topic of the week, and our topic this week is, of course, summer plans. Because as we said yesterday, and I keep messing it up, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. There, I got it the first time. Fail to plan, plan to fail. We don't want to do that. Failure is not an option. So we continue to make our plans for summer. We said yesterday, you scope it out, you get out either the paper calendar or the Outlook calendar or the calendar that you make on the computer, whatever it is, and you make a plan. And if the plan changes, that's okay. We know that's all part of executive functions, having flexibility. But if we've got a plan, we're much more likely to get stuff done. My son loves summer and hates me because I always have this thing about, and every year it's changed a little bit, about when video games are allowed, what has to be done before video games, and it really kind of cheeses him off. But you know what? We make progress, and not as much as I want. Let's not get crazy here, but we make progress. And we try to do some fun things too. All right, so those are our topics for today. We have a big schedule for you here today. We have a healthy eating tip for you, and we're also calling today TED Talk Day. It's possible that we're going to show you 2 TED Talks today, because there's one that we've been scheduling to watch for a long, long time, and a new one that came into our awareness yesterday afternoon that I almost can't stand, that I think we're going to have to show that in a minute. And then we're going to talk about challenging behaviors today. Now, I know that we had promised you yesterday that Evelyn Gould was going to be here, and something has come up, and I don't think that she's going to be here with us. We'll keep you updated on that. But we still are having Dr. Dorian Granpeche tomorrow, so do not despair. We will have a plethora of BCBAs before the week is out, but we may not have Evelyn Gould this morning, and I'm very sorry about that, but we're still not definite about that. So we are going to take a short break and come back and do healthy eating, and then I think we're going to show you an amazing TED Talk with a teenager that you might be hearing about in the news this week. But first a break, and then healthy eating, so stick with us.
Hi guys, welcome back. For the month of May, I thought it'd be really neat if we made our own bird feeders. What's cool about it is once it's done and it's hung in your front yard, backyard, balcony, or whatever outdoor area that you have, your kids will be able to observe the bird feeder and tap when they see birds coming over and feeding from it, like, oh my gosh, oh, so exciting. Do you see that? Sorry, I got distracted. I'm just so excited about all the different birds I've been seeing now that I have a bird feeder hanging outside. Anywho, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are 2.5 cups of birdseed, half a cup of boiling water, 2 packets of unflavored gelatin, a spatula, twine, scissors, wax paper, and cookie cutters. Alright, now that I got your materials, it's super easy. I have my boiling hot half cup of water, and I'm going to take my 2 packets of unflavored gelatin, and I'm going to pour them in and stir it. The reason I pour it in the water first all by itself is to make sure that the gelatin dilutes really well and I can stir it up real nicely. Now that it's been all stirred together, I'm going to take this liquid and pour it into the birdseed, making sure to scrape up all the gelatin that we diluted. Now I'm just going to stir it all up. Okay, now that this is all mixed up, I'm going to take my wax paper and put it on my table just so I don't make a mess. And then I'm going to take my cookie cutter and lay it down. I'm also going to take a piece of string and cut it, about 6 inches long. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the cookie cutter halfway full with our birdseed mixture. And I'm going to take my string, fold it in half, I'm going to place it in the center. This way you can hang this up once it's done and dry. Okay, now that it's full, I'm just going to pack it in. So now that this is all compacted, it's going to take about 6 hours for the gelatin to get completely hard. If you take it out too soon, the whole thing's going to fall apart. So let's wait a little bit and I'll see you guys in a few moments. All right, it's been 6 hours now, so let's see if this little guy worked out. So I'm just going to pull him up and pop him out, okay? And here's my finished bird feeder. All you have to do now is hang it outside and wait for all the great things you're gonna see. Like, ooh, I see another bird. This is so exciting. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the activity and keep me up to date with all the different birds that you and your child see outside your property. Until next time, craft on. Bye, guys.
Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back. It's time for our healthy eating tip for the week. And my tip this week is fruit salad. This is a lovely educational opportunity, and it's a time of year when it's a great possibility that you're going to find things a little bit less expensive and potentially organic. You know how we love that. Okay, so you remember that, and maybe you're still in this phase. It doesn't matter how old your child is. Remember the Wiggles? And the Wiggles used to do that song about fruit salad, yummy, yummy. I'm not going to sing for you, don't get afraid. And But if you imagine how much fun fruit salad could be, if you have that song, or you can bring it up on your Pandora or whatever, and play that depending on your child's age, it could be really fun. So you make it a fun event. You can start with making a list of fruits that you want to go in the fruit salad, fruits that your child likes and would enjoy eating. And I encourage you to go through each step of making the fruit salad together. So having the plan, first of all, writing the plan down on a piece of paper. Then taking the piece of paper and match it to your child's skill level. So if your child is not yet reading, and you want to use pictures of something, you can do it online. Get some pictures of different fruit salad and do it with a computer to make your list that way. You could do drawings of it, right? If your child is old enough that they can be writing letters, maybe you have them start with doing the B for the banana. If they're older, have them write out bananas. Have them write the list. But there's that thing about when does an adult start to make a list before they go to the grocery store? What day do you teach that? Who knows what day you teach it, but start early, right? So that you don't have to teach it, right? It just becomes a fun thing that you're doing with your child. So you get the list to go to the grocery store, then take them with you to the grocery store. And they will notice that some of the things on their list aren't in the grocery store. Make it like a scavenger hunt to find the things that are in the store. And when there isn't something, say, okay, what can we replace this with? Then, okay, they don't have blackberries this week at our store, or they're just too expensive. You're teaching a lesson about comparison shopping and saying $6.54 for 5 blackberries is not in our budget. It's okay to be bringing those things up with kids, even if they don't get it in that moment. Bring it up. It's never too early. We know from so many kids who have told us that they didn't understand things at the time, but they kind of stored it away. And then later on, when they put another piece together, it all came back to them. So don't be afraid to put those things in there. But have the scavenger hunt in the grocery store. And if you have multiple children, assign different things. Everybody stays in the produce aisle. And if there's one child that you know that is a escape artist, that's the child that you take with you. But have them say, okay, you have to find the bananas, you have to find the raspberries, and you have to find the apples. And ask them to look and see if they're old enough. Are they organic? What are the considerations? What was the price? So that they're noticing all of those different things and taking in their environment. Great. So you shop and key your children into what it costs to make fruit salad. It's okay. If you have a farmer's market to go to that has those kinds of things, even better, right? Because then they get an opportunity to talk to the farmer about how did you grow this. But so key that a child is able to identify the food items and understand the process of purchasing them, right? Shopping for and planning and purchasing them. Then when you get it home, it's so much easier, right, for us to make the fruit salad ourselves while the children are in the other room doing something else. But it's a missed opportunity. It really is. I know, believe me, it's tough to coerce them away from the television and the video games to get them, or the toys, right, and to get them into the kitchen. We have to make it really fun and exciting for them, whether that's getting them the chef hat to wear or an apron to do or letting them taste test as they go. But it's important that we get our kids' fingers in there. You can get little plastic knives, the disposable picnic knives, and have them help to cut. That'll cut through a strawberry, that'll cut through a banana, a grape. It may not cut through an apple, and maybe that's where mom or dad or grandma has to help out with that. But let them experience the process of cutting. That helps with fine motor skills, right? And eventually they're going to want to use a real knife down the road, and then we can teach about how we don't cut our fingers off, right? So match the skill level to where your child is and what's appropriate. But I guarantee you there's something that even the smallest child can go in and participate with, right? And letting them taste as they go. I think that that's a really important thing because it's a reinforcing and getting the tactile of doing fruit. And then ultimately you have this beautiful fruit salad that they have a certain amount of pride and self-esteem in. Make sure you heap on the praise for them participating. And I think it's great to serve it at something where it's the whole family or it's friends or relatives that are coming over. We had a brunch probably like 6 months ago, and I had my son help make the fruit salad. And boy, he talked about that the whole time. I helped with the fruit salad. Try the fruit salad. You're really going to want to try the raspberries. They're so good, right? He was so excited, and it gave him something to talk about at the party. So participate with your children. Make a fruit salad. It's plentiful this time of year. Things are starting to come in. Participate in it and use it as a teaching tool. You can learn so many things making a fruit salad with your children. All right, that's our healthy eating tip for the day. And now it is time. We're going to show you a TED Talk. There's a young man another article, we've been hearing about him in the news a lot lately, Jacob Barnett, and he was featured in an article on the Huffington Post just earlier this week. He is 14 years old at this point, but we're going to show you a TED Talk that he did last year in New York. And he has Asperger's, but he was diagnosed with autism, and he was considered moderate to severe when he was 2 years old. And now they're saying that he very likely has a higher IQ than Einstein, and that this young man is in line at some point to get a Nobel Prize. So I thought it would be a great idea, and Emily agreed, for you to see this young man's TED Talk. Again, his name is Jacob Barnett, and take a look. We'll talk more about this afterwards, but this is Jacob Barnett's TED Talk.
Hey, I'm Jacob Barnett. Are you guys excited? Yeah! All righty. I'm here to tell you why you guys should forget everything you know right now. So, first thing you guys need to know. So, suppose you guys are all doing your homework. Okay? You know, it's something you have to do. And you're doing great on your homework. You're getting great grades. You're getting fabulous prizes such as, Benjamins and all this great stuff. I'm here to tell you you're doing it all wrong. That's right, I did just say that. You're doing it all wrong. In order to succeed, you have to look at everything with your own unique perspective. Okay? What does that mean? That means that when you think, you must think in your own creative way, not accepting everything that's already out there. By the way, the people I'm showing in the background are my little brothers, Ethan and Wesley. One of them's a chemist and the other one's a meteorologist. So your perspective might be the only way you can see art or history or music or whatever. So let me show you one of the ways in which I can see math. So, for example, that's 32, and the rotations represent addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, etc. So today, my main reason I'm coming out here is to do some quantum mechanics. Okay? So today what we're going to do is we're going to do the Schrodinger equation, split it into a time-independent component, and we're going to solve it for the boundary conditions of a lattice and a particle in a box. So let's get to work. So I have some lecture notes, which I'd like you guys to pass out. I'm going to split them into 2 rows, so if I can have some people come up and get these. No, wait. Before you come up here, I need to let you know about something very quickly. Okay, just stay there. I'm kidding. I didn't... I did not come here to frighten you all with quantum mechanics. Not yet. So let's think about something simpler. How many of you here have heard about circles? Okay, good. So why are circles important? They're the shape of cookies, they're the shape of skateboard wheels, and most importantly, they're the shape of the thing that turns on your Xbox 360. So what do we know from school about circles? We know pi r squared. We know they're round. Do we know anything else? Not really. So let me show you something cool you can do with circles. It's called Johnson's theorem, where really a theorem is just, a way mathematicians can think of stuff. So what Johnson said was you take 3 circles, you overlap them in a way such that there's 6 blue lines, where I called each of the circles blue, such that there's 6 lines coming in one point. The other 3 points are on a circle the same size. Interesting. So this isn't just pi r squared. This is something new. So because Johnson didn't just think, oh, it's got to be pi r squared and round, that's it, he created math. And he did it in his own unique perspective way. So now, I know not all of you are necessarily mathematically gifted, so... So let's move on to some more interesting stuff. By now, you might have heard about Isaac Newton in your high school careers. You might have heard about him from, prisms or whatever he might have done. So in 1665, Isaac Newton was at the University of Cambridge. Now, for those of you who really know your history, at that time, Cambridge had closed due to the plague. So Isaac Newton, he didn't have a way to learn. He had to stop learning, and he was probably, hiding in a dormitory with his cat running from the plague. Now, while he was doing this, he decided he had to stop learning, but he didn't want to stop thinking. Okay? So, because of that, he was thinking about this problem in astrophysics. And specifically, I think he wanted to calculate the motion of the moon around the Earth. So I sort of reamped that problem into the case of Mercury around the sun. So, okay. What he did was, in order to solve this problem, he created calculus, Newton's 3 laws, the universal law of gravitation, the reflecting telescope to check his work, and optics, and all this crazy stuff. In that 2 years that he had stopped learning. So I guess that was really good for us, because at that time, Newton had to stop learning. But when he stopped learning, he started thinking, and he created science. And, okay, that's just great. We now have a theory of physics. So, okay, he could have probably been some top scholar. He could have had a 4.0 GPA. He could have been on the dean's list. He could have had his professors proud. But he wouldn't have created anything if he didn't stop learning. Newton needed to start thinking and think of things with his own unique perspective in order to, create his theory. So now let me formally introduce myself, because I did not do that at the beginning of the talk. So about 11 years ago, I was diagnosed with this thing called autism. What that meant was I was focusing in things in such extreme detail that it seemed like I wasn't thinking at all. Basically, I'd be like, oh, look, here's this reflection of that light, so there's a light up here. But, oh, there's my shadow, so there's a light back there. And I look over, and it's over there. Okay. Okay. So because of that, people thought I would never learn because it just looked like I was just staring into the open. It looked like I wasn't doing anything at all. So people told me I would never learn, I'd never think, I'd never talk, I'd never tie my shoes, which, okay, they might have had a point on. I'm wearing sandals. So... But however, at that age, I went to the Barnes & Noble and I got a textbook, and from the data that was in the textbook, I derived Kepler's laws. When I wasn't supposed to be learning or thinking at all. So basically, from the other people's point of view, it was just, it wasn't really looking too good. I wasn't finger painting or doing story time or any of the other stuff the 2, 3, 4-year-olds would do. But, what they did was, because of that, they took me to special ed, which is extremely special, and in fact, it didn't educate me. So during that time, I had to stop learning because I didn't have a way to learn. I was just in special ed. So what they would do is, okay, so I wasn't able to learn anything at all. However, at that age, I started thinking about things in sort of the way of, all these shadows. And I think that's why I like astrophysics and physics and math today. Because I had to stop learning. I believe that's why I do what I do today. Okay, so let me continue about gravity. Okay? So, it's a very exciting topic for those of us who are in physics. So let me continue. Now, what happened was, about a couple of centuries later, the physicists had enough experimental technology to test Newton's orbit. Now, Newton predicted that the orbit of Mercury was an oval, or scientists like to say an ellipse. However, when we pointed our telescopes out, we saw that thing. So, okay, for those of you who are scientists, that's extremely exaggerated, but okay. This was not looking good. Newton had failed. One of the greatest physicists of all minds had failed. He failed. So we need someone else, just like Newton had done, to forget everything they knew and, recreate this. That man's name was Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, what he would do, he was also, he was stopped in his tracks. He was not doing very well. He was Jewish, and it was pre-Nazi Germany, so he was not able to get a position at the local university. He had to work at a patent office, which, okay, that's not theoretical physics, and we're talking about Einstein here. So, yeah. What happened was Einstein, he had all this time to think all of a sudden. He had to stop learning, but he had all this time to think. And so what he had done was he liked to have these thought experiments, and he liked to think about all these different things. So what Einstein thought of was, okay, he pictured himself on a trampoline with a couple of friends, which, okay, there's actually a failure of my sentence there, and the fact that physicists, that's usually a couple more than they have. So Isaac Newton was probably on Albert Einstein was probably on the trampoline with one of his friends, and, they were probably playing some, tennis or something. So, however, they're physicists, they don't have very good hand-eye coordination, so they probably didn't, catch the tennis ball, and it went rolling around them. And Einstein looked at this, and he said, without friction, this is gravity. He realized this is just gravity. So afterwards, he predicted the motion, which is going to end up like that crazy thing. But that crazy thing is exactly that other crazy thing. So Einstein had solved the problem just by thinking about it in his own unique perspective, in his own unique way. He stopped learning, and he started thinking, and he started creating. So now let me get back on the story. I wasn't really looking too good, so I just kind of brushed it over there. So about 3 years ago, there was a calculus class I wanted to sit in the back of, so I decided in order to sit in the back of this, I am going to learn algebra, trigonometry, all the other middle school stuff, all the high school math, and first-year undergrad calculus in 2 weeks, so I can sit in the back of this class. I was 10. Okay. So, also at that time, for this, I got accepted into the university. And yet again, I was still 10. So, okay, then I had to go to an entrance interview, okay? That's what you got to do. It's the university. So I had to go to this entrance interview, and because of parking, I had all these coins, and, I dropped them all over the guy's office, making him think I had no common sense, and he pretty much held me back for a semester. So I also had to stop learning at that time. Okay, what did I do? Did I stop learning and just, start playing video games and stuff? No! I started thinking about shapes. And I was thinking about the specific problem in astrophysics that I was really interested in at that time, which I still kind of am. Now, what I did was, over the next 2 weeks, I started thinking about these shapes, I started thinking about this problem, and after a while, I had solved it. So I had solved this problem in astrophysics, which basically it's similar to, what's happening with Einstein and Newton right now. I'm not going to tell you the exact problem due to the fact that I have not published it yet. When my paper gets published, you may figure out about it. For those of you who read scientific papers. Okay, so I thought about all these problems, I only had a 500-sheet thing of paper from Ofsmax, and since I was thinking of all these multidimensional things, it filled them up really quickly. So then I moved on to whiteboards, because I was out of paper. But the whiteboard, it also filled up pretty quickly, So then I moved on to my parents' windows. After that, I just got getting chased down by all this Windex and stuff, and, my equations would get erased by these horrible Windex creators, but... So, because of that, after about a month or so, my parents realized I wasn't going out to the park, and I was just drawing these weird shapes on the windows. And basically, I was trying to disprove myself. I didn't want to end like Newton. I did not want to, be proven 100 years down the road, disproved. So what I did was I was going on the windows, I was trying to disprove myself, but to no avail. After that, my parents, they figured I should be on the park, so they called some guy up at Princeton, and they told him to disprove what I was doing. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and he said I was on the right track, so not going to the park. Okay, so Then, because I had to stop learning, I started thinking, and I solved the problem. After that, I decided to create a calculus video for other people who wanted to still do calculus, the 3 others out there, and so that way they could also learn. Okay? So I made this calculus video. People noticed that I was 12 and I was doing a calculus video. After that, the first people that noticed was the Indianapolis Star. And they put me on the front page of some newspaper, and as you can see from this picture, I was eating a sandwich. It was really yummy. So, okay, after that, my calculus video, it went viral. At the time of this photo, it had some 2 million views. So, first of all, a calculus video going viral. Who would have ever thought? So, after that, it got translated into whatever this language is. Is there anybody who can tell me what language this is? I can't read it. Okay, it's Chinese. Okay, good to know. So then after that, I had some guy from Fox TV called me up, and I was able to draw on his windows, and he was Glenn Beck. The thing special about that experience is that the windows were huge, 23 floors above the ground, and overlooked the Chrysler Building. So that was a fun experience. Then after that, I started having some really strange visitors show up to my house. I had Morley Safer show up, and he's from CBS 60 Minutes. Now, for those of you who can really see this picture very well, you may notice that I'm wearing the same sandals. So, okay, now, let us sort of recap what we've done. Have Einstein and Johnson and Newton and everyone I talked about, are they really geniuses? Is that really what makes them so special? Is that really why they did all their work? Absolutely not. No, that's not why. Okay, so what happened was, all they did was they made the transition from learning to thinking to creating, which by now the media is translated into, genius. Now, I'm pretty sure they have relatively high IQs, but as some of you may know, there are lots of people out there with high IQs who don't create this sort of thing. They usually just end up memorizing a couple 100,000 digits of pi. So, first of all, my question to them is, why not memorize a different number? I'm wearing phi right now, so, okay. So, in conclusion, I'm not supposed to be here at all. I was told that I wouldn't talk. There's probably some therapist watching this who's freaking out right now. Okay, I'm not supposed to be talking, I'm not supposed to be learning, but because I made that transition from learning to thinking to creating, I am here today. And I'm talking to some 400 to 800 people in New York. Okay, now, what do I want you guys to get out of this speech? Okay, what I want you guys to do is, for the next 24 hours, I know you guys may have school or whatnot, even though it's a Saturday. For the next 24 hours, don't learn anything. You are not allowed to learn anything for the next 24 hours. Yes. However, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go into some field. You all have some passion. I don't know about it. I've been talking to you for 11 minutes. I have no idea what you guys are interested in. But you guys have some passion all out there, and you all know what it is. So I want you to think about that field instead of learning that field. And instead of being a student of that field, be the field. Whether it's music or architecture or science or whatever. And I want you to think about that field, and who knows, maybe you can create something. Thank you very much. I'm Jacob Barnett.
Welcome back. So, an amazing young man, 14 years old, on the spectrum, and so many things I want to talk about. First of all, I want to talk about the fact that what a gift and what a joy, he is. And how exciting it is to see him up there and to hear him talk and to see the kinds of things that he's interested in 14 and to hear the process about, people told me, stop what you're doing, stop and be like everybody else. And that he decided to pursue a different path and think it through and find a way for him to do what he wanted to do. That isn't going to be true of all of our kids, right? Some of our kids are going to have to be taught the persistence to go with their passion, and we need to be mindful of that. But I think it's really important that we see individuals like this so that we know what's possible, right? But there's a flip side to this too, and there was somebody that had written on their Facebook maybe a week and a half ago, how frustrated they were with why do we only ever talk about the two ends of the spectrum? Why do we talk about the genius? And they weren't talking about us specifically here at Autism Live, because I think that maybe we're a bit of an exception to that. They were talking about the general world. Why does everybody want to know about the kid who can, he's a genius, and that you can fly him over Paris once and then he can draw the entire city in great detail, and, talking about individuals like this that are clearly geniuses in a specific area, right? That happens for some of our individuals on the autism spectrum. And then there's the whole other end of the spectrum of kids who are maybe twice exceptional or have autism at such a greatly affected level that they're not able to communicate with the rest of the world at all. And that what about everything in between? What about all of the individuals, the vast majority of individuals who are somewhere in between those two things, and how frustrated they were that it seems like the media tends to focus on the two ends of the spectrum. And I know others who would say, boy, the media focuses on the end of the spectrum where kids are doing good and doesn't pay any attention to everything in the middle and on the far end of kids who are greatly, greatly affected. And I just have to say on this subject a couple of different things. Our kids are all individuals, right? And they come into the world in a different circumstance, and they come in with different health issues, and they're all affected by autism on a different scale. All of them. Absolutely all of them. And for anybody to suggest that we don't celebrate those who excel saddens me. I want to say to these people, do you not watch the Olympics? Even though the vast majority of us are never going to be athletes at that level, isn't it fun to watch what's possible and to see people excel? I think so. I find that interesting. And, if I in any way were to think, let's not focus on this 14-year-old and how brilliant he is, and to see his TED Talk at 14. First of all, that mom and that dad went through the same thing that we all went through when their child was diagnosed, and they were told that he was never going to speak, never tie his shoes, never work in a job. And they made it to this point. I know that it wasn't without heartache. I know that it wasn't without meeting a whole lot of obstacles. And it would seem like a disservice if I didn't celebrate that this is where they got. And it would also seem like I was saying that I know for sure that my son would never be at this level. And I don't know about you, but I'm not ready to give that up. I just am not. I know that there are some of you who have come to peace with and said, my child is not going to make it past a certain point. And I don't want to tread on that at all, because we're all on different journeys. But the one thing that I know for sure is that there is progress for absolutely all of our kids. So if you, have moved into acceptance, I applaud you, but please don't be in contentment. That's the one thing I'm going to ask for you. Be in acceptance, but don't be in contentment, because there's always more. There's always, always more to do. And when we look at what is the difference, some of it is just our individual kids, but what it really comes down to, and I really was thinking about this a lot last night, as we pare it down and go, well, why do some kids make progress and other kids don't? My first question is, what have they had access to? What have they had access to? Because we know that there will be a certain amount of progress for all of our kids. It doesn't matter if they're twice or thrice exceptional. You can have a child who, and I have certainly met children who have Down syndrome and who also have autism, and then they have extreme health issues, and yet we know that those kids can still make progress. So it seems to me, and certainly in terms of what I have seen in the experts that I have talked to, and they all say across the board, there is progress available for all of our kids. They're not all going to do TED Talks, but then let's face it, we're not all going to do TED Talks either. Right? So that isn't what it's going to happen for everybody. But the other thing that I look at this video and I see this sweet, sweet 14-year-old boy who's so enthusiastic and has so much passion and is so intelligent. And he is a master's student working on his PhD in quantum physics. Is that what it's in? Quantum physics, yes. Working on his PhD, 14 years old and working on his PhD in quantum physics. And I try to picture him at a regular junior high school at the age of 14 or a regular high school. And I was saying to Emily, my goodness, the kids would eat him alive. And that makes me sad. That makes me angry. That makes me want to get up and go do some work, because he, what an interesting, intelligent young man he is. And yeah, he's a little different. He is a little bit different, but you see how beneficial it is to the world that he's a little bit different. And it makes me frustrated that we've participated in some way in a society that thinks it's okay to tear that down and say, stop. Overwhelmingly in his presentation, he talked about how many times the world has told him to stop, but clearly I get that his parents didn't participate in that. And his mom has a book out, actually. And actually, the name of the book, I have it here on a piece of paper, except I'm not seeing it. I'll find that for you. Oh, yes, here it is. The Spark, A Mother's Story of Nurturing Genius. And I know it's available on Amazon. And we'll see if we can't get her to Skype into the show at some point. But I really do think, we've heard from Temple Grandin, and Temple Grandin talked about how important it is to nurture the things that our children do well. And when I think about this, I got to be honest with you, I feel like I've come up short a little bit, and yet we have nurtured some of my son's interests. But I love that Temple Grandin's mom said, if this is what you're interested in, then we'll find a way for you to do this, and sent her to her aunt's ranch to work with animals. And I think about Christina Adams, who wrote the book A Real Boy, and her son was so fascinated with airplanes. And so she made arrangements to take him to a small airport so that he could go in and see what the controls looked like. That we need to take it to the next level with our kids if there's something they're particularly interested in. Now, I know 2 years ago, I took my son because he wants to be a rocket engineer, and NASA one weekend a year they have an open house, and it's always a very inconvenient weekend. But we have the JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab, that's close to us here in Los Angeles. They open it up for a weekend. It's very high security the rest of the year. You can't get a tour even if you know somebody. But once a year they open it up, and it is, I'm going to say this, it's politically incorrect, but it's a bit of a geek fest, right? But in the best possible way. And my son and I went year before last, and it was an amazing experience. And he picked out the office that he wants, and it has led to so many other things. And I think the more as parents that we can think out of the box and find mentors for that kind of thing, and to feed that interest, maybe that's what we make our vacations about. We've been talking about summer plans, and it just sort of kicks me in the butt that I want to take him places that feed his interest, because clearly that makes a difference. Clearly that makes a difference. So I hope that the intent of showing you this is to uplift you, to say, here is one of our own, and yay team, and to remember that while we're all in different places and we're all going to end up in different places, that it's important that his mom could have easily sat there and said, I believe what they tell me. And I love that he says, I shouldn't be here. They told my parents that I was never going to talk, and there might be a therapist somewhere who is freaking out seeing me here talking, doing a TED Talk. I wonder if it's not a therapist that's freaking out seeing it, but a doctor who gave a diagnosis. And somebody wrote in and said, what is the name of the kid. He's amazing. His name is Jacob Barnett. And by the way, he does have other videos on, if you Google him and go to YouTube, that video that he talked about going viral where he talks about physics, it's on YouTube. So you can check out his videos. It's Jacob Barnett. His mom wrote the book, The Spark, A Mother's Story of Nurturing Genius, and her name is Christine Barnett. And you can find that book on Amazon, and we will see if we can book her to be on the show. So, and a little bit later today, I think we're going to have another TED Talk to show you that talks about the bullying. And it's not an individual who is on the spectrum, but it's an individual who's different. And I just really feel like we have to talk more about the bullying, and we have to talk about what it does to all of us. And we have to get clear on that because it's devastating to all of our kids, literally all of our kids, whether they're on the spectrum or not. But I'm especially protective of our kids on the spectrum because sometimes they don't have some of the coping skills that we assume other kids do, but I got to be honest with you, I don't know that anybody deals well with bullying. So we'll deal with that in a little while. But first, we have to go to the A word. And I love this series, The A Word, because it gives you an opportunity to see what's possible when we give the right circumstances. Now, Jack Riley, I would not go so far as to say that, he's the luckiest child on the face of the earth, but he is lucky in terms of the fact that his autism was caught relatively early. He's got great parents who love him and have a sense of humor and who are in this for the long haul. And he has access to arguably the best ABA therapy in the world. And we see this unfolding of what can happen in a family, and we see that even then it isn't easy. And the progress is, sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but there's still progress, and it's substantive. I offer this up to you to watch, to see the arc of ABA so that you see what's possible and why we're all fighting to get you funding and everybody else funding to make sure that insurance can't skinny out of this, because this is a real issue. And when we take care of real issues and there is progress, the reason why insurance did not pay for ABA for so long, their argument was, we do not have to pay for things that are experimental. We only have to pay for things that have been shown to show progress. And ABA has been shown to show progress for over 20 years now, which is why they're having to start to pay for it. But we have to continue to create legislation to make sure that more people have access to this. There was a time when only the wealthiest people could afford things like penicillin. We have to make sure that all of our kids, all of them, have access to ABA. But see what's possible. Here is the A word. Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Hey, 2 seconds. Oh, yes. Hi. What's up? iPhone. Later.
Jack Riley is now gaining attention without prompts. When first teaching a new skill, a therapist does errorless learning, which is prompting a child with the correct response. 4 months ago, when gaining attention was taught, Jack Riley needed a gesture, physical, and vocal prompt to do it. As time progressed, less prompting was needed, like using only a gesture prompt or a partial vocal prompt.
Sure, which one do you want? Both.
Another skill they have been working on is categories. First, they teach it to him receptively.
Give me food. Where's the food? Good job.
Then they teach it to him expressively, first with prompts.
Tell me a furniture. Say Say a couch. A couch is a furniture. Furniture. Good. So tell me a furniture. Couch.
is a
Couch.
Say couch is a furniture.
Furniture.
Good. So tell me a furniture.
Couch.
Is.
It's furniture.
Yeah.
And then without.
Tell me a food.
Okay. Apple is food.
Good. Tell me another food.
Watermelon is food.
Yay! Watermelon is a food. Come here. Oh, you're so smart.
Welcome back. So a rather short but fun episode of the A Word. A couple of things that I want to talk about from this particular episode. So they've been working on him gaining proper attention. And so much of the time when we're, especially as parents, because we come to the party with baggage, right? Of, I've had a rough day and we tried to teach this yesterday and it didn't work out right. And it's important that we always acknowledge that that's what's going on, right? That we not try to go, oh, I should just suck it up and get over it. Acknowledge that that's what's going on, but make the decision about, am I able to focus on what we're trying to achieve right here in this moment? And if we're not, that we say, okay, then I'm going to wait till later. That we not try to set ourselves up for failure, right? We're always trying to set ourselves up and our kids up for success. So you notice, and we have to pick and choose what we react to. You notice that she's trying to teach him, okay, you need to tap me on the shoulder to say, excuse me, and say my name. That's how they've decided they want. There's lots of ways we can teach a child to get attention, but this is how the family decided that they wanted to start. They're going to teach him other ways down the road, but they're going to start with tapping on the shoulder and saying, excuse me, or saying Jessica. So, and in the beginning, he doesn't know how to do that. So she's physically prompting. And she did, if you watch earlier episodes, she took his hand and did a full physical prompt and then turned and said, what do you want? Now she's doing a gesture where she's pointing and having him, and he still doesn't want to do it. Now, did you notice what he did with his feet? He's frustrated. He wants the car. And she's asking him to to do something else, and he doesn't want to do it. And so it's not a mean thing, but he kind of pushes her with his feet. Kind of like it could go into a full kick, but it's not, but he's pushing at her, and he kind of pumps her with his feet. Now, I don't know about you, but as a parent, that's a moment when I can get derailed. That's a moment where I could turn and say, no kicking, do this, right? Because I want to talk it out. I want to beat him with the words. Does not actually beat him, but you know how sometimes we just want to talk. Not effective. Jessica doesn't even attend to. She gives no attention to the pumping with the feet because right now he's frustrated and what he wants is the car. And the lesson that she's teaching him is you need to do this. So she doesn't even attend to that. She doesn't even look at it. She doesn't say stop doing that. If he kept doing it, she might move a little further away and be doing this, but not too far away because he's not going to be able to reach her shoulder, right? It's a perfect example for me of, and it's easy to miss it sometimes, which is why I love that you can go back and watch the episodes. And I encourage you to go back and look at this episode and watch what he does. But he just pumps her with his feet to see if it gets him the car. And she, we call it the tempting, where she shows him the car, but at the same time, so it's the car, and he looks at the car and she does this. So he knows if I do this, I'm going to get the car. And this is what we're trying to teach, not the absence of kicking. How many times, let's do a little crazy check here. How many times have you, because I do it every day still, said to your child, no kicking, because that's so effective, right? And that really gets the job done. It doesn't. Of course, I'm being sarcastic here. But it doesn't get the job done. And in fact, almost never, when we ask somebody to stop doing something without giving them something else to do, it's almost never effective, right? And it takes us off the moment. He gets to escape having to do this. So picking and choosing what you attend to, focusing on it. Remember, what I'm teaching right now is this. I'm not teaching good table manners right now. I'm not teaching what to not do with your feet right now. I'm teaching this. So, make sure you don't get hurt, but, the little pump with the feet, which is not polite and is very rude, and we want to make sure it doesn't happen when he's 22, it will take care of itself if we give him a more effective way of communicating, which is what we're doing. Then you see her working on building languages and sentences. And you see it they're really resistant to using a table. Part of it is space. But part of it is that he's a very busy boy, right? And so Jessica has the little pictures out on the floor, and she's saying, give me a furniture. And then he, and then there's the moment where she's doing the couch, and she's saying, what is this? And he has to say, a couch is a furniture. And he has to be prompted the first time. She says, a couch is a furna, right? And then he finishes the sentences, and you see her go back into it. So what is this? And he does that couches as she has to prompt him, a furniture, right? What is this? So, and that's those trials that we see, that we talk about all the time, that sometimes you have to do 3 trials, sometimes you have to do 10 trials, but giving them another opportunity. It seems counterintuitive. It seems like, we're just drilling it. But the fact of the matter is, it's giving another teaching opportunity. How often have you had to do something that it didn't go well, that you thought, that was over so quick and I didn't get it? And as adults, we say, let me do it again. Let me do it again. And if we don't, oh my goodness, there's so many times on the computer where if somebody shows me how to do something, and in the moment I go, that's a really cute trick, and then I keep doing what I'm doing, and because I didn't do it again, and I didn't do it 3 times, it didn't get cemented, so now I have to go back and say, how did we do that thing again? Am I pushing this button? Where if we just stopped for a second and said, wait a second, let me back up, let me see where you did it again, and we did it 3 more times, it might be cemented for us. For our kids, we got to give them those opportunities. They're much more likely to learn if they get to try it again and again and again. And then the key, getting the reinforcement. Getting the reinforcement immediately. For us, it's that we now know how to do it. For the child, it's that now you get praise. Sometimes you get high fives, and you get to play. When they're on the bed at the end, and notice that this environment, she's going to teach this child wherever he's teachable. And we have to do this with little ones. It can't all be at the table. So he likes to run around on that bed, thrilling. Let him run around in the bed. And she's saying, tell me a food. And he says, a pancake is a food. Beautiful full sentence where he's putting together a whole bunch of different things. He had to visualize. There's no pancake in front of him. He has to visualize a pancake, understand that a pancake is a food, and put it all together in a sentence. And when he does that, he gets the pillow, which is very reinforcing to him. To get bopped with a pillow is, huge praise for him. Is that a problem? No. The child is learning how to speak, and it's fun and exciting for him. So we can't all be at the table, and you see how much fun and how much learning is going on. Watch the A word. That's the long and the short of that little speech. Watch the A word. It'll give you ideas, and you're not going to do it exactly like the A word, right? Because you have a different child, but it gives you ideas and goes, oh, right. Here's where I can do this a little bit better. Oh, wow, it's totally okay to do this jumping on a bed. Yes, it is, as long as you're being safe, right? Nobody falls off the bed, nobody gets hurt. All right, so watch the A word. They have their own YouTube channel. I always say you can watch them be toilet trained. You can watch them get ready to go off to school. It's an amazing series. Okay, we are going to take a short break, and when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about funding, a little funding refresher, and then after that, we're going to show you another TED Talk about bullying, because I'm really on a bullying thing the last couple of days. I feel like it's just so important that we all get as aware and cognizant and as hopeful and proactive as we can be about bullying. But first, this message, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit about funding. Stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman with Taka. My guest here.
I am Jennifer Lucero with Taka.
Taka Mom is here in the house. Jeff saw on a TV commercial, they were making calzones, and he looked at me and goes, Mom, please make me that. Wait a minute, yeah, calzone, you can't have calzone. He goes, well, you make me pizza. Why don't we call it a puzzone? So we're going to do this ode to Jeff puzzone. So I'm going to have Jen come on in.
All right.
You're on charge.
Ready.
We're going to add a little grapeseed oil, garlic, cut up chicken, finely cut up onion, and we're going to throw a little bit of basil. So we're going to just take about 5 minutes or so, saute up the chicken and all of the onions together. While Jen is slaving away at the stove, I'm going to make the pizza crust. A lot of gluten-free choices that you have out there for pizza crust. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the dry. Again, I'm using eggs. There are a lot of egg replacers on the Taco website. We have about a dozen different ways to replace eggs. So I'm going to go ahead and add my shortening. Calls for a little extra salt, which I'm going to put in here. And also add a little pepper. And we also have herbs de Provence that gives the crust a nice Italian flavor. Can't forget the apple cider vinegar, organic stuff ready to go. Yes, I have all my ingredients. We're ready to rock with this mixer. And don't be afraid of dough. Dough doesn't bite. So here's what we'll be working with to make the puzzone. I'm ready to go. Let's get this party started. So what we're going to do next is roll out the dough. I like to be rolling in the dough, but we're going to roll out the dough instead. So let's go ahead and get started here with that. So again, you see me using the parchment paper all the time. Love this stuff. It's basically unbleached, ready to go. It's just going to make life a lot easier on your rolling pin. You don't need to coat it or anything, which is a lot easier. But I swear I should buy that by the gross ton. So the puzzones, this basically makes 2 big puzzones. I'm going to take half of the dough and roll it out. Half of the other dough will be for the other puzzone that we're going to make in just a little bit. So you want to do, you're not making a pie crust. You're kind of making a long oval shape. So we're going to try to make a shape where I'm going to basically roll this over with all the yummy fillings. And so any combination or variation thereof. This sauce, just real simple, is organic crushed tomatoes. I've added a little bit of salt and pepper and herbs de Provence in that as well, which I love. I like extra fresh basil. That's always yummy to have on your puzzone. And thank you. This turned out fantastic. So we're just basically building it the way that we want to eat it. Of course, my favorite rice-free, organic, dairy-free, soy-free cheese. It's going to pop out the sides.
Okay.
I'm not afraid of popping out the sides. So that's the beauty of the parchment paper. Once you're done, you just flip it over and peel it back. So I'm just taking a fork now and going around the edges. It looks so pretty.
It looks really nice.
So for 400 degrees, we're going to go for about 25 minutes. You want it golden brown. And because we cooked everything pretty much already, you're not worried about not having everything fully cooked. So look how cute those look.
Looks great.
Like those 4 happy people right there. This weighs a ton. So let's go to the magic oven. Pull out our finished product. And voila!
Good.
Oh my gosh,
looks
this
beautiful.
is so yummy. There's nothing better than a little Jeff Ackerman puzzone. And this is going to be nuclear hot, but we'll go ahead and cut it open so you can. Oh my gosh, this is going to taste so good later on for your kids.
Yum.
Feedback, keep it coming. Thank you for helping, Jen.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us. Come back to Autism Live. We'll keep doing allergy-friendly cooking classes. If you have any suggestions or things that you would like to see us make, bring it on. You can reach us at autismlive@gmail.com or Facebook.
Love the Facebook.
I know, too much for me. Facebook, so facebook.com/autismlive, or thousands of taco recipes ready to go. Basically go to Takanow, TACANOW.org. And we'll see you next time.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild, let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I want to take a few minutes here to talk about funding because it changes from time to time about where funds are available and what's happening. And I was really reminded yesterday that it's a very frustrating time for a lot of people. Even though we see so much progress with insurance, we're also seeing that there are bumps in the road and there are gaps and places that people could fall through cracks and holes. So we can't have that happen. I want to remind everybody that this is not an easy journey and that I'm going to say a bunch of things and I'm going to say them very quickly, but I want everybody to remember that there's nothing easy about this, that I'm not suggesting that it's easy, and that I remember, and we still have our challenges now, but I remember what it was like in the beginning, and it was so overwhelming. But the thing that I know for sure, you know how Oprah likes to say, what do you know for sure? What I know for sure from my own circumstances and from so many autism families that I've had the great privilege of meeting along the way is that the single most important thing that we have to do in the beginning is get our heads on in the right place, which is, as we said earlier, that there is no option for failure, that there are no challenges that are insurmountable. Now, is that the truth? I don't know. But I do know that when we get into the mindset of saying we're going to find a way to make it work, that everyone, and in my life, that is what ended up happening, and in the life of every autism parent that I have met that has said to me, look, we had something amazing happen. It's because they got that mindset on. And I didn't invent it. I borrowed from it. But the minds, you know how sometimes when you make up your mind that you're going to do something one way or the other, and then every challenge that comes along becomes something that you go, all right, how are we going to get around that? How are we going to get through that? How are we going to get over that? Not, okay, well, that stop that we heard from the young man that we just saw the TED Talk. We don't want to get stopped ever. And I can tell you that in my own journey with my son, there were so many times where it seemed like we were dead in the water, that nothing was going to happen, that, you know, even after we started ABA, there would be a new piece of legislation that was coming along that it would look like we were going to lose all of our funding the next day. Or that we got the call from the regional center and they said, you know, your time is up. Whatever it was, there were things that happened along the way that I thought, oh, you know, man, whew, is this the end? And then I remembered that mindset, which is, no, you've got to find the way around this. There's no option but to find a way around it. And it really is amazing what can happen when we get that mindset on. So I'm going to say a bunch of things and your head is going to say, no, I can't. And then I'm going to remind you that it's possible that maybe you can't to that one thing, but you've got to find the solution. And I'm going to throw out some suggestions for things. So we said yesterday, and I'm just going to recap some things. The first thing that you have to do is check what your insurance can and will and should pay. And be mindful of the fact that what it was last week isn't necessarily what it is this week, isn't necessarily what it's going to be next week. It really depends what part of the world you're in and what part of the country that you're in and what city you're in and what provider you have. And there are all kinds of guidelines that I can give you, but remember that none of them are written in stone. That I can tell you that if you have a self-funded plan, that chances are that you may not be covered. And yet we know many people who have a self-funded plan that are covered. Right? So don't just hear, oh, self-funded plan, I have a self-funded plan, I guess I'll stop asking. You still have to ask the substantive questions. You can look on autismvotes.org and see if you have insurance reform in your state. And if you do, then there's a possibility that your employer is supposed to be providing it. And keep in mind, you might be calling up your HR department and they might be saying, no, we don't cover that because that what was true 6 months ago when they attended a meeting about it, but it may not be true now. So you know that saying about don't take a no from somebody who wasn't authorized to give you a yes. It is going to be an investment of your time to track it down and find out for sure whether your insurance covers something. Now, I will say that parent support groups will be of some help to you, but imagine, you know, I sat here yesterday with a mom who lives in the same community that I do, has the same regional center, but we have two totally different insurances. So, you know, it isn't always going to be, but I would suggest that you ask your local support group and say, does anybody have the same insurance? Because if you do, I want to compare, you know, what's happening And it's not a waste of time, even if nobody says that they have the same insurance, because if you're in California, for instance, you're in the same regional center, and knowing, okay, my regional center behaves in this way will help and support you. If you're not in California, let's say you're in New York, New York has something like the regional centers, and you can still compare notes. There are many states who don't have something like the regional center, so it really depends upon where you are. But again, don't take a no from someone who isn't authorized to give you a yes. Ask them, here's some questions. When you call your HR department, ask them, what do you cover for mental health? Because you know there is a federal law that's the Mental Health Parity Act. Whatever your insurance coverage provides for mental health, they have to provide for autism in terms of behavioral health services. So sometimes that's the way around. And you might be getting a no from your insurance, but then you have to escalate, right? Ask, can I speak to a supervisor? Ask, I mentioned yesterday that in Kaiser they have someone called the ombudsman, a patient ombudsman who's supposed to be helping you to coordinate things. Make sure that you escalate. Sometimes that means being on the phone and being on hold and being put through to another person, but don't give up. What I always used to think of, and sometimes I literally sat a clock. We had a little timer that we had for tasks that my son did. We still have this, by the way. That sometimes if we have a countdown from a video game or whatever, having a digital timer is a really helpful thing. And sometimes I would put a digital timer there and I would start the stopwatch. You can do this on your phone too, and time how long you've been on the phone, so that eventually when you get to the person that you want to talk to, you can say, I just want to know, I've been on the hold about this issue for 48 minutes, and do you find that appropriate? Because then, and you be nice about it, but let them know, I've been holding for 48 minutes because your phone tree works in this way, and then they get extra kind and extra willing to help you, or you escalate it to the next level. And I would also do that to remind myself, because I would sit there and think, I'm wasting time, and I could be doing this, and I could be doing that. And then in the end, when it would work out and I would get access to the services, and I would think to myself, okay, that 48 minutes that I spent on that phone and the 48 minutes that I spent here got us $10,000 worth of therapy. I guess that was a good use of 48 minutes here and 48 minutes there. $10,000 worth of therapy. It can add up in your time, and I suggest keeping a little bit of track of it so that you can say, to somebody, this is how hard I've had to fight for this. And I don't think that that's appropriate, because none of us should have to fight as hard as we have to do for our kids to get what is appropriate for them. It's crazy making, right? But we have no time to go crazy. There's time for that later on. And believe me, you'll find the time later on. But there are things to be done. So we look at the insurance component first, because it's the biggest, deepest well. Do you know what I mean by that? Because as more of you get insurance, and there are other funding sources that I'm going to tell you about that you can go to, but they're going to have smaller amounts of money. And you need a bigger amount of money to be able to fund ABA. And of course, we're talking about the best ABA where somebody's coming to your home and you've got support for that, right? And a lot of insurance is paying for that now. Your insurance may tell you you've got a cap of $30,000, but again, Mental Health Parity Act. If they would pay $100,000 a year for therapy if your child had a brain injury sustained in a car accident, it doesn't matter what the state limits are. They have to have parity. They have to be willing to pay the same. It's federal law. Federal law always overrides state law. So even when you go to autismvotes.org and you see, okay, I'm in this state and, they allow $45,000, that's all I'm going to get. Not necessarily. Go back to your plan and check. Because Mental Health Parity Act, federal law. So start with the insurance. Once you've tapped the insurance and started that ball rolling, and you're really being very diligent about staying up on it and staying in tune with things. I mean, I can tell you that my husband's insurance through his employer still does not cover ABA, and there is no mental health. There's no parity, which is atrocious, right? Absolutely inexcusable. And they're self-funded, so even in 2014, there will be no ABA. But my son still got a fully funded ABA program. And I say that to you to let you know that when there's a will, and when you're willing to put in enough time and ask enough people and be tireless about it, you will find it. My son, I think the final figure was over $250,000 worth of therapy that he got. So you have to gird yourself, right? You put the armor on. I always say, get your Norma Ray on, because we're not going to a picnic. Get your Norma Ray on. We're going into battle, and we're not giving up. And okay, so insurance. You try insurance first, and you have to stay on it. It's something you got to keep massaging, right? Because it will change from time to time. Next step that you go is there local funding? And this, you have to go to your local support group. Believe me, there are things that you don't know about that unless you ask. And I'm trying to connect with people in different states so that when you guys write in and say, I'm in Georgia, that I've got a Georgia person that I can put you in touch with. And when you write in and say, I'm in New Jersey, because it's impossible for any one entity to keep track of all the things that are happening in all the 50 states. But I'm trying to connect with, and if you're in a state and you know what the things are in your state, let me know, because we'll make you our state liaison for that state. But it is different in each state, so go to that local support group. Of course, if you've got a TACA group in your area, I suggest going to them first. If there isn't a TACA group, look around to see what is. Try your autism societies, because those are in a lot of places too, and they're very adept at telling you what's going on the ground level where you are. Autism Society of America, and they have different chapters. I think they have over 250 chapters around the United States. So check there. And if you don't have one of those two things in your area, a TACA or an autism society, once you get things rolling, I'm going to encourage you to start one in your area, because it will help you, it will help your child, and it will connect you with all those people that you want to be connected with. I guarantee you, because of where we are with autism right now, there is someone who has information in your area that you want, whether it's who the right dentist to go to is, or who cuts hair and understands that your child has a sensory issue. Whatever it is, there's somebody in your area that has good information and you want to connect with them, so you don't have to reinvent that wheel every time. And there may be a huge funding source. When I think about the fact that the regional center here in the state of California paid for the lion's share of my son's therapy, and I didn't know they existed when my son was diagnosed. I did not know that they existed, but it was a parent who said to me, this is where you have to go, this is what you have to do. We also, the parent that wrote in yesterday talked about the fact that they called the regional center and that they said there's like a 120-day process. And I think that that's probably an accurate term. This is a group of people who are overworked, understaffed. I will also tell you, too, that I said this yesterday, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? If you are in the state of California and you're dealing with regional center, know that they are tired and they're overworked and there isn't enough funding for everyone. Fortunately, insurance has filled some of that in so that people are getting, there's more funding for people who don't have insurance. Step up to the plate, make sure that you're clear, make sure that you're concise. They've heard everything there, right? So pare down what you want to talk about with your child when they say, what kind of behaviors are you seeing your child have, so that they see whether you qualify for funding and how desperate your situation is. Do not waste time telling them all the wonderful things that your child can do, right? It seems counterintuitive because you want to be proud of your child and all the great days that they have and the good things that they do. But in this instance, they're asking you, what do you need help with? How bad is it? Don't tell them about the good day. Tell them about the worst day, the worst behavior on the worst day. That's not being duplicitous, right? Every child has moments and they're going to grow and they're going to ask you about those things once you start therapy. But you need to streamline. Part of the reason why it takes 120 days is because they're having to talk to parents on the phone who are saying, well, sometimes, he uses his words when Great. That's fabulous. You don't need help for that. How about when he's kicking you in the head? That's what you need help with. So streamline, you know what they say about an elevator pitch. If you want, in Hollywood, you want to tell somebody about something, you got to have an elevator pitch. You need to be able to be concise and say what you need in the time that it takes an elevator, 2 minutes, right? Get your elevator pitch together as a parent and say, here are the behaviors I need help with. Here's how it is on its worst day. Right? That's what you're going to talk to them about so that you get it done faster. And you have to keep on them. Keep calling them. See if your paperwork is someplace. Keep copies of everything because paperwork gets lost. If you saw the stacks of paperwork for kids that they have that need help, you would understand it's not them being malicious. I firmly believe that. But you keep a copy of everything so that if you call and say, did this make it to the next desk? Who's the next person that I talk to? Are you missing any forms? I have them. Not only will your 120 days possibly get shorter, but they will see you're a parent who's on it. And when you're asking for somebody to fund your ABA program, which means that you have to keep a schedule and you have to be there and know that the therapist is going to be there and you have to fill out this paperwork, and they're going to spend maybe $250,000 on your child, they want to know that the parents are on it. They do. Don't be a pain, but be persistent. Stay on it. Once you've looked at those local sources, and again, California and New York are not the only ones that have them. There are local sources of funding. Then after that, then you get into grants. And I mentioned 2 places yesterday, Act Today and iTalk. I think these are going to be your greatest resources. Act Today, which gives more grants than anyone else for the kinds of things that parents want. You get to specify, here's what I need. I need assessment. I need, X, Y, and Z. Realize that they don't give grants over $5,000. So pick and choose what you want to spend your grant time in, what you want to spend your grant money on. And you're much more likely to get a grant from any place where it's a doable amount. So I encourage you to do IBT trainings and ask for grants for those, and to do skills to ask for grants for those. That's going to fill in gaps. Let's say that you get the insurance to pay for 25 hours. Because that's the window you should be in, 25 to 40 hours, especially if your child is under 5. If your insurance is giving you less than that, fight. Ask them to show you how that's effective, because guess what? They can't. I'm getting hepped up. I do, because these are our kids' lives. It's so important that we get access to this information. Fight. If they're offering you less than that and your child is under 5, get your Norma Ray on, because they're not doing right by your child. And if they were going to give your child a half of a prescription for an antibiotic, we would go, what's the deal, right? Where do you show me the science that shows that 10 hours of ABA is effective for a 4-year-old? I don't know where that study is, because I don't think it exists. But ask them to show you that. And get an assessment that shows that your child, if you have a competing assessment that says that your child needs 30 hours, your insurance company is going to have some difficulties with that. And maybe you need a grant for that assessment, but that's a perfect thing to ask of somebody like Act Today. Now for iTalk, they're going to give you different grants that do different things, from iPads to everything under the sun. There are other great organizations that give individual grants to families for different things, depending on what your interests are. And Ernie Els has a foundation. Dan Marino has a foundation. Doug Flutie has a foundation. The Peets, the Holly Rod Foundation. There are all these other foundations that you can apply for grants. Apply to all of them. Piece it together. Puzzle piece it together with all the different funds. I mentioned yesterday the United Children's Healthcare Fund. You do not have to have insurance through United Healthcare. It's a one-time grant of $5,000. But another great place that you can go to get more funding. It's a lot of running around to do all the grant, but in the end, it can be very beneficial. When you're in a bind, though, and we talked to somebody yesterday whose funding is in question, and you don't want to lose ground, then you might be looking at having a fundraiser, or you might be looking at taking a loan. I really want to encourage you to check the Jewish Free Loan Association, because they give no interest loans. And the process is not that lengthy, because if you're really in a position where time is of the essence. So all of these different things to keep in mind for funding. And then I've said this before, and I will say it again, that I'm willing to take on 2 families to help figure out the funding where you are and connect you with resources so that you can solve your issues. You got to contact me here, though, and give me your contact information so that we can be chatting and figuring it out. It's not easy. It's not easy, but we get in that mindset of, I'm going to figure it out. Other people have. It doesn't make sense, right? I looked around me and I saw all these families that were figuring ABA out, and I thought, I don't have that kind of money. I can't do that. I can't borrow from my business. I can't, what are we going to do? And I couldn't stay in that space because there was nothing to be done in that space. So then I started getting on that mindset that I was told of, let me look to figure out what are the solutions. How are we going to make this happen? And somehow it does when we get in that mindset. All right, I've gone on way too long. But now we're going to treat you to another TED Talk. It's TED Talk Day here. This is a young man who is a poet and has a lot to say about bullying and being different. So check it out.
So many of you. When I was a kid, I hid my heart under the bed because my mother said, if you're not careful, someday someone's going to break it. Take it from me, under the bed is not a good hiding spot. I know because I've been shot down so many times, I get altitude sickness just from standing up for myself. But that's what we were told. Stand up for yourself. That's hard to do if you don't know who you are. We were expected to define ourselves at such an early age. And if we didn't do it, others did it for us. Geek, fatty, slut, fag. And at the same time we were being told what we were being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? I always thought that was an unfair question. It presupposes that we can't be what we already are. We were kids. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a man. I wanted a registered retirement savings plan that would keep me in candy long enough to make old age sweet. When I was a kid, I wanted to shave. Now, not so much. When I was 8, I wanted to be a marine biologist. When I was 9, I saw the movie Jaws and thought to myself, no thank you. When I was 10, I was told that my parents left because they didn't want me. When I was 11, I wanted to be left alone. When I was 12, I wanted to die. When I was 13, I wanted to kill a kid. When I was 14, I was asked to seriously consider a career path. I said, I'd like to be a writer. And they said, choose something realistic. So I said, professional wrestler. And they said, don't be stupid. See, they asked me what I wanted to be, then told me what not to be. And I wasn't the only one. We were being told that we somehow must become what we are not, sacrificing what we are to inherit the masquerade of what we will be. I was being told to accept the identity that others will give me. And I wonder what made my dreams so easy to dismiss. Granted, my dreams are shy because they're Canadian. My dreams are self-conscious and overly apologetic. They're standing alone at the high school dance, and they've never been kissed. See, my dreams got called names too. Silly, foolish, impossible. But I kept dreaming. I was going to be a wrestler. I had it all figured out. I was going to be the garbage man. My finishing move was going to be the trash compactor. My saying was going to be, I'm taking out the trash. And then this guy, Duke the Dumpster Drosy, stole my entire shtick. I was crushed, as if by a trash compactor. I thought to myself, what now? Where do I turn? Poetry. Like a boomerang, the thing I loved came back to me. One of the first lines of poetry I can remember writing was in response to a world that demanded I hate myself. From age 15 to 18, I hated myself for becoming the thing that I loathed, a bully. When I was 19, I wrote, I will love myself despite the ease with which I lean toward the opposite. Standing up for yourself doesn't have to mean embracing violence. When I was a kid, I traded in homework assignments for friendship, then gave each friend a late slip for never showing up on time, and in most cases, not at all. I gave myself a hall pass to get through each broken promise. And I remember this plan born out of frustration from a kid who kept calling me Yogi, then pointed to my tummy and said, too many picnic baskets. Turns out it's not that hard to trick someone. And one day before class, I said, yeah, you can copy my homework. And I gave him all the wrong answers that I'd written down the night before. He got his paper back expecting a near-perfect score and couldn't believe it when he looked across the room at me and held up a 0. I knew I didn't have to hold up my paper of 28 out of 30, but my satisfaction was complete when he looked at me puzzled, and I thought to myself, smarter than the average bear, mother... This is who I am. This is how I stand up for myself. When I was a kid, I used to think that pork chops and karate chops were the same thing. I thought they were both pork chops. And because my grandmother thought it was cute and because they were my favorite, she let me keep doing it. Not really a big deal. One day, before I realized fat kids are not designed to climb trees, I fell out of a tree and bruised the right side of my body. I didn't want to tell my grandmother about it because I was scared I'd get in trouble for playing somewhere I shouldn't have been. A few days later, the gym teacher noticed the bruise and I got sent to the principal's office. From there, I was sent to another small room with a really nice lady who asked me all kinds of questions about my life at home. I saw no reason to lie. As far as I was concerned, life was pretty good. I told her whenever I'm sad, my grandmother gives me karate chops. This led to a full-scale investigation, and I was removed from the house for 3 days, until they finally decided to ask how I got the bruises. News of this silly little story quickly spread through the school, and I earned my first nickname, Pork Chop. To this day, I hate pork chops. I'm not the only kid who grew up this way, surrounded by people who used to say that rhyme about sticks and stones, as if broken bones hurt more than the names we got called, and we got called them all. So we grew up believing no one would ever fall in love with us, that we'd be lonely forever, that we'd never meet someone to make us feel like the sun was something they built for us in their tool shed. So broken heartstrings bled the blues, and we tried to empty ourselves so we'd feel nothing. Don't tell me that hurts less than a broken bone. That an ingrown life is something surgeons can cut away, that there's no way for it to metastasize. It does. She was 8 years old, our first day of grade 3 when she got called ugly. We both got moved to the back of class so we would stop getting bombarded by spitballs. But the school halls were a battleground. We found ourselves outnumbered day after wretched day. We used to stay inside for recess because outside was worse. Outside we'd have to rehearse running away or learn to stay still like statues, giving no clues that we were there. In grade 5, they taped a sign to the front of her desk that read, "Beware of dog." To this day, despite a loving husband, she doesn't think she's beautiful because of a birthmark that takes up a little less than half her face. Kids used to say she looks like a wrong answer that someone tried to erase but couldn't quite get the job done. And they'll never understand that she's raising 2 kids whose definition of beauty begins with the word mom. Because they see her heart before they see her skin, because she'll never always been amazing. He was a broken branch grafted onto a different family tree. Adopted. Not because his parents opted for a different destiny. He was 3 when it became a mixed drink of 1 part left alone and 2 parts tragedy. Started therapy in 8th grade. Had a personality made up of tests and pills. Lived like the uphills were mountains and the downhills were cliffs. 4/5 suicidal, a tidal wave of antidepressants, and an adolescent being called pauper. 1 part because of the pills, 99 parts because of the cruelty. He tried to kill himself in grade 10 when a kid who could still go home to mom and dad had the audacity to tell him, "Get over it." As if depression is something that could be remedied by any of the contents found in a first aid kit. To this day, he has a stick of TNT lit from both ends, could describe to in detail the way the sky bends in the moments before it's about to fall. And despite an army of friends who all call him an inspiration, he remains a conversation piece between people who can't understand. Sometimes being drug-free has less to do with addiction and more to do with sanity. We weren't the only kids who grew up this way. To this day, kids are still being called names. The classics were, "Hey, stupid," "Hey, spaz." Seems like every school has an arsenal of names getting updated every year. And if a kid breaks into school and no one around chooses to hear it, they make a sound. They're just background noise from a soundtrack stuck on repeat when people say things like, "Kids can be cruel." Every school was a big top circus tent. And the pecking order went from acrobats to lion tamers, from clowns to carnies, all of these miles ahead of who we were. We were freaks. Lobster claw boys and bearded ladies. Oddities, juggling depression and loneliness, playing solitaire, spin the bottle, trying to kiss the wounded parts of ourselves and heal. But at night, while the others slept, we kept walking the tightrope. It was practice, and yes, some of us fell. But I want to tell them that all of this is just debris left over when we finally decide to smash all the things we thought we used to be. And if you can't see anything beautiful about yourself, get a better mirror, look a little closer, stare a little longer, because there's something inside you that made you keep trying despite everyone who told you to quit. You built a cast around your broken heart and signed it yourself. You signed it, they were wrong, because maybe you didn't belong to a group or a clique. Maybe they decided to pick you last for basketball or everything. Maybe you used to bring bruises and broken teeth to show and tell but never told. Because how can you hold your ground if everyone around you wants to bury you beneath it? You have to believe that they were wrong. They have to be wrong. Why else would we still be here? We grew up learning to cheer on the underdog because we see ourselves in them. We stem from a root planted in the belief that we are not what we were called. We are not abandoned cars stalled out and sitting empty on some highway. And if in some way we are, don't worry, we only got out to walk and get gas. We are graduating members from the class of we made it. Not the faded echoes of voices crying out, "Names will never hurt me." Of course, they did. But our lives will only ever always continue to be a balancing act that has less to do with pain and more to do with beauty.
Another great TED Talk. And a reminder to all of us about behavior at school. And, you know, here is a very articulate young man and husband of a wonderful wife, and yet both report that they were greatly affected. And you know, as a performer and as a poet, you know, to be invited to do a TED Talk, he's at the top of his game, and yet still clearly this is an issue for him. So important that we talk about bullying, and so important that we acknowledge that it's happening, and you know, come up with strategies about what we are going to do. I don't have answers. As a parent, I'm still trying to work it out too. And as an educator, I'm still trying to work it out as well. I think it's going to take all of us. I don't think there is any one specific answer. I think it literally takes all of us being vigilant. And I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about the children in my life. And because they were talking about, this is the age range. My son is in 4th grade now. And they said, this is the age range. Get ready, Shannon, put on your seatbelt because the kids get ugly at this point. And I said, we've already seen some of that. We saw that beginning last year. And what's interesting to me and what was surprising to me was that I expected bullies were going to be people I didn't know and people that didn't have a backstory and kids that I didn't care about. And that just isn't the case. That all of our kids are capable of saying things that hurt other children and physically hurting each other. I don't think all kids are capable of that, but I think that a lot of kids are capable of that when push comes to shove. And, it's some of what we've seen reported in the news of late in the last couple of years that we see that when a child eventually goes to violence, that a lot of times it's pointed to and said, this child was bullied. So, it just goes to show that we don't know what the end game is. But I think it's important that we not vilify the bullies, that we understand that there is a problem, that their bullying behavior is challenging behavior in and of its own. And I promised we were going to talk a little bit about challenging behavior, but remember that whether our child is on the spectrum or not, the only time that someone engages in a behavior over and over and over again, like bullying, the bully is engaging in challenging behavior over and over and over again. And the only reason why anybody does that is because there's a paycheck. And we can tell them not to, and we can tell everybody around the bully, don't do this, but all it takes is one person to in some way reward the bully for the behavior. And there's lots of reasons why somebody bullies, maybe it just makes them feel less bad. Maybe there's that automatic reinforcing thing about it, or it could be to get attention. It could be to get access to something. It could, this is a circumstance where sometimes we look at things and say access to something. Well, I don't see what they're getting access to. Access to power, access to status, not being the low man on the totem pole, which is what we see with many, many bullies, that they were bullied at some point and they don't want to ever be in the position to be bullied again. And so they're going to bully before the next person. So we have to combat it from both ends. We have to be able to see the bullies as people who are hurt. That's really hard for me as a parent. When somebody is nasty to my child, and I think I talked about this a little bit, maybe I did it during a break, but somebody wrote in 2 weeks ago about what do you do when, parents or kids of parents are mean to our kids, that it's just so frustrating. I think I was sharing with Dr. Grampichet that we just had a spring concert for my son, and in the concert, I have to be careful how much detail I give, but there was an older young girl who during the concert was just being horrible to my son, and it was ticking me off with a capital T. And it got to the point where, and this child talked throughout the whole concert. She was up on the risers, and her mouth ran constantly, just blah, 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 blah. And she's somebody who has to be talked to constantly about the fact that she's not talking. And this is a neurotypical young woman who is grades ahead of my son. And my son turned and said something to somebody about after they would come down off the risers and come back up, and there's a repositioning, and he turned to say to somebody, I need a little bit more room, or I'm supposed to be standing here, whatever it was. And she turned it into this big thing about shushing him and you need to be quiet in the middle of the concert. Oh, and it wasn't just once, it was many, many, while she kept on talking, right? And as a parent, I got more and more furious, and it was all I could do to not stand up and say, at one point she kind of flicked him in his shoulder, and it was all I could do to not stand up and say, do not touch my child, and why don't you mind your own P's and Q's, and you stop talking and get a rein on it. And I had to control myself to sit in the seat and not get up and say that. But in my head, I was visualizing giving her a talking to afterwards. And then in my head, I'm totally not watching the concert at this point. Then I pictured talking to her parents and saying, excuse me, why aren't you on this, right? And that was about when I got to the point where I went, okay, wait a second. These are all people. This is a young girl who clearly has her own issues because she has to be talked to constantly about not talking. So of course she's going to police him about it because that's what we do. The thing that we get in trouble for is the thing that we look at and, you're in trouble now because you're doing it. And yes, she's older and she should know better, but clearly she has some impulse issues. And I'm sure that her parents have noticed that. And I'm sure that they're working on the things that they're working on. And how upset I would be if somebody came up to me and said, hey, your kid told my kid not to do this during a concert, because I would need to say, you know what, he has issues with that and we're working on that and we're trying to be better. I was still mad because she really was, it wasn't the worst kind of bullying, but it was in the middle of his performance and he was doing a good job. He was doing a good job based on what all the children were doing, but he was especially doing a good job for him, and it was ticking me off. But I do think it's important that we pull it down and go, wait a second. They're people and they're having a hard time. That doesn't mean that they're going to fix it. I don't know. And if she had been somebody, she's not going to be going to his school next year. If she had been, if this was going to be another concert, I would have come up with something more proactive so that it didn't happen again in the future. But this is the last concert that she will be in with my son. In any case, we've got like 3 minutes, and I wanted to go over some of the things that you guys had for the answer to the question of the day. How are you planning to prevent regression in the summer? And we had somebody write in and say extra ABA therapy, woohoo. In his pre-K, fabulous. Play dates with his future kinder class. Wonderful. Great idea. We also plan to use a visual schedule in class and at home. Superlative. You're hitting it at all marks. And they wrote, last summer I saw a big regression in my son's speech and even sleep patterns. So I hope that this will help support him. I think you're doing an awesome, awesome job. And using that visual schedule is going to get ready for kindergarten. Emily's going to cycle through some of the ways that you guys can get in touch with us while I finish up here talking about some of these things. And I'm going to remind you that tomorrow is Ask Dr. Doreen. If you have specific questions for Dr. Doreen Grampiche, now's a great time to send them in. We'll leave the feature open overnight. Write in every question that you have, and we will start with them in order tomorrow. So some of the other things people wrote in, thankfully, we've gotten a great therapy place where he can go Monday through Friday all summer, and they work with him. They even keep him up on his schoolwork. Awesome. Somebody else says, just got a full kit with ABA flashcards to continue on with categorization, I can say it, and tacting, tons of dedication to keep her engaged. Of course, skills and Ask Dr. Doreen are my summer saviors. Gotta love it. And we love you. Somebody else who says, my daughter is going to extended school year. A lot of you will have that in your IEP for 8 weeks, 4 days a week, 4 hours a day to keep up with her work and help with the transition into her new school. Make sure that you find time to do something outdoors and exercise during the summer as well, right? Because that's a lot of school, but I'm sure it's necessary. Another person who says extended school year, individualized, of course. Somebody else who says we don't know yet. Hopefully we're giving you some ideas. Someone else says continue education in a fun way and adding more therapy for about 12 to 15 hours per week. All of these great things. We're out of time, but again, I want to remind you that tomorrow we have Dr. Doreen Grampiche here answering your questions. So write those into us during the night. We appreciate getting those. Then we'll have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy's going to share with us how her trip with her son and her husband went last week. Can't wait for that. All right. We will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 a.m. Eastern time. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.